given by staff. If an evacuation is required, please calmly proceed to the nearest safe exit as identified and directed by staff and evacuate away from the building to the farthest point in the parking lot to allow clear and immediate access for first responders. Okay, with that, we will start our agenda with an agenda check. Any commissioners or staff have an adjustment or to the agenda? Okay. Second item on the agenda is the oath of officers for commissioners that were newly elected. So that would be myself, Commissioner Carlson, and Commissioner Morris.
Raise your right hand, repeat after me. I, John Barofsky,
Hi, John Barofsky.
do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Oregon,
and the state of Oregon,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
faithfully perform the duties of Eugene Water and Electric Board Commissioner for the city of Eugene.
faithfully
Perform
perform the duties of Eugene Water and Electric Board for the city of Eugene
during my continuance therein,
during my continuance therein.
and this I do swear, so help me God.
This I do swear, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carlson. Raise your right hand, repeat after me. I, Sonia Carlson,
I, Sonia Carlson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Oregon,
and the state of Oregon,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and I will, to the best of my ability,
faithfully perform the duties
faithfully perform the duties
of Eugene Water and Electric Board Commissioner for the city of Eugene
of Eugene Water and Electric Board Commissioner for the city of Eugene
during my continuance therein,
during my continuance therein.
and this I do affirm under pain and penalty of perjury.
This I do affirm under pain and penalty of perjury.
Congratulations. Thank you. Commissioner Morris. Raise your right hand, repeat after me. I, Tim Morris,
I, Tim Morris,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Oregon,
and the state of Oregon,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
faithfully perform the duties
faithfully perform the duties
of Eugene Water and Electric Board Commissioner for the city of Eugene
of Eugene Water and Electric Board for the city of Eugene
during my continuance therein,
during my continuance therein,
and this I do affirm under pain and penalty of perjury.
and this I do affirm under pain and penalty of perjury.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Congratulations, commissioners. Round of applause. Okay, next on the agenda is new Commissioner Tim Morris's self-introduction. If you don't mind introducing yourself to us and the community as a whole.
Well, thank you, Mr. Barofsky. Thank you. For those that don't know who I am, my name is Timothy Morris. I am the newly elected commissioner for wards 1 and 8. I am truly grateful for the opportunity to have both run and been elected by my community to serve in this seat. I come from a pretty challenging background and have had a lot of struggles in my life. And I think that many members of our community are in very similar positions. And so I'm excited to bring that perspective and these opportunities. In addition, I work with the low-income community of Eugene and of Lane County every single day. And so these are perspectives that I hope to bring as well to this board. And I am truly thankful to my friends and family who supported me throughout this journey and through all of my complaining. I'm truly grateful to those who voted me in, and I'm truly grateful for former Commissioner McCray, who I think really set a standard of what a commissioner looks like. And I don't think I'm able to fill his seat and fill his shoes, but I hope to set my own example moving forward. So thank you for that opportunity.
Great. Thank you and welcome. Look forward to working with you over the next few years. We've got some big issues to conquer, and I'm sure your voice will be a valued voice at the table. Next thing we have is item from board members and general manager. Start off with Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Happy New Year to everybody, and welcome Tim, and welcome back Sonia and John. Just a couple things. I want to thank customer service for talking me off the cliff. I was one of the 1% that got some little glitch in the system, and they told me I didn't do something. I said, yes, I did, and we agreed to disagree. But that's right. We just shook hands. We just did the peace flag, and it's all good. So it's all understood. So, but thank you. It was excellent customer service. I really appreciate it. Just thinking that I'm going to bring this up a little later too about protocols on how one general consensus thing that we all had, and that's the length of the meetings and trying to figure out how we're going to do that. One little tiny suggestion I have, a few minutes is a few minutes, but instead of having to read that prologue about where the bathrooms are and where the emergency room is and everything, we have security here. We can print that out. And they know who are staff and they know who's not staff. They just hand it out and give it to them instead of us having to read it. Just a thought. I don't know if there's a protocol issue there or not, but it's just a way to kind of help streamline, get through that, because sometimes that takes more time than I think it deserves. Thank you.
Mr. Carlson.
Well, I wanted to say thank you to the staff who I was a part of the River Road shutdown that they had to do to perform some maintenance on water. And I think the staff did a great job in notifying everybody about the situation and then getting the water turned back on by the morning. So that was great. And I know it's not easy when you have to shut down area of that size for that length of time. And I appreciate that they did everything they needed to, got it back up and running. And I had a couple of small suggestions on kind of maybe some additional questions that people asked me about just because I was in the neighborhood and would love to, find out what happened with that and if there are any changes that will be made because we're always in the mode of continuous improvement. And otherwise, I just want to say welcome, Tim. Thank you. And this is it sounds a lot louder. So whatever they've done, maybe that's a good thing too. So thanks, everyone. Happy New Year.
Indy.
I have had no billing, water, or electric problems in this past month, so I'm grateful for that. I just want to say welcome, Tim, to the board and really looking forward to serving with you.
Tim.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the welcomes. And I look forward to serving with all of you as well. I've had no electric or water issues as well. My whole thing transferred over seamlessly and often even without my oversight. So thank you very much. That was great. I wanted to take just a brief moment of after the general election in November, staff turned around and really started to provide information to me and try to catch me up and has done an incredible and excellent job of not only cascading how these conversations are going and meeting with the staff here, but I think one of the things that's not on any agenda or any minutes is what I've been able to see is the passion, I think, from many of our staff here and just the dedication that I've seen. So I truly want to thank those who have had the chance to sit down and give me the fire hose and breadth of information that EWEB is. And I have had nothing but nice things to say. So thank you all so much for that.
Great. And for myself, not much happened for me over the month. I did have an opportunity to stop by College Hill another time when they were preparing for a blast, got to interact with Laura and some neighbors that were around there. And all of the feedback that I've gotten from the neighbors has been very positive. They understand that there's a disruption in their neighborhood, but they feel that we've been handling it very well. And so that was encouraging. I know that if somebody was setting off a bomb across the street from my house every day for a month, I would be a little agitated, but these people seem to take it in stride and are happy with what we can do to make the inconveniences as little as possible. So that's all I have. Frank?
Well, commissioners, good evening. Welcome to 2025. really thank you for your service, and thanks to the re-upping of 2 commissioners, and welcome Tim as a new commissioner. Look forward to continuing to work with you and working with you in the future. I just had a couple of things. One of, we did get back the results of the Run to Stay Warm, which raised once again over $6,000 for our customer care program. 6,000.
6 or 60.
It cleared 6,000. That's actually a significant, it's about what it was the year before, and it's a significant improvement over when we used to actually run the event, which we might have cleared 6,000 but spent 25,000. So it's actually a much better opportunity for us. And I wanted to thank the community and staff for their participation with that. The other one was Commissioner Carlson. We do appreciate the feedback that you took the time to give us on our communications. We have implemented some of those already. The GM report that went out just today included the new door hanger, which talks more about how customers can prepare, which was a big part of the feedback. Not just that this event is maybe occurring in your neighborhood, but here's some of the things that you can do and some of the resources that you can access. So we've changed some of the other communications as well, but there's a copy of the new and improved door hanger based on your feedback. So thank you for that. That's it.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to the next, which is correspondence. Anybody have questions or input on the correspondence? Well, if nobody else does, I will. One of the things that we got in the correspondence is the water system master plan update. When I read that, I was encouraged. You know, obviously, I think a 10-year master plan is important, especially for that amount of infrastructure that we had. The question that I had, and I would hope could get a response in the upcoming months, is what was on the 2015 master plan that we achieved, or ones that we didn't achieve, and the reasons why we felt it wasn't appropriate to achieve them. I think a look back is always a good thing when you're getting ready to put a new plan in place. And so I didn't dig in and try and find in the archives where the old one was, but maybe just a highlight of some of the major projects that we got in the 2015 one and the milestones that we were able to achieve. And if there were ones, what were the problems or the reasons why we didn't achieve them, and if there's a reason we should put them in the new one. That's all that I have. Frank.
Yes, Commissioner Barofsky, we do have an upcoming agenda item, which is a full update of the master planning process. I believe that's scheduled for February. It's either February or March. I believe it's February, where there'll be more of a complete update on this particular master plan. This was really a sort of a directional, here's where we are, here's where we're going with it. But within the next month or so, you'll get more information.
Great. And that would be great information to have in that. Not
Yep.
just think this is our new one, but let's look back and see how we did in the past. Because I know there were some people in the room that were a part of that, but I wasn't. So, Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, I'd just like a side note that Karen Kelly is speaking at the City Club on Friday at the Wow Hall at noon. If anybody's available, she's speaking about the water master plan. And I also have a presentation from MWMC, but if I can shake it, anyone can be there to listen to what's going on.
Yep, great. I was going to mention that in the board agenda report later, but I guess I don't. Thank you for saving us the time.
Okay. Anybody else on correspondence? Yes.
Sonia, I just wanted to note that part of the reason that we have this meeting is that if we want to change anything in how we review the general manager, we want to make sure that we set that up for next year. So it's clear for this year how the general manager will be reviewed, just as a, common courtesy to him and or whoever is in that position on how that evaluation would go. So that's why we have this meeting. I just wanted to kind of outline that because and I'll turn over to Frank.
Yeah, I think this particular correspondence item relates to not just, it's a little bit of background as to where we are in the process. There is the opportunity for the board to provide additional direction on my performance later in this meeting. This was an opportunity to provide the background for that as opposed to the agenda item. And we'll open it up for more discussion at that point.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, moving on, we are now into public input 6:05. We're a little early on this. Do we have anybody signed up? All right, so as of right now, we don't have any signed up. What I think I'll do is move on to the next agenda item, and then at 6:05, we'll do a time check and see if anybody has signed up virtually or has come in at that point, and we'll relook at this agenda item when we get closer to that. So with that, we're moving on to item number 7, which is the approval of consent calendar A.
I'll move to adopt consent calendar A.
And second, Mindy seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is approval of a consent calendar B.
Move to adopt consent calendar B.
Second by Commissioner Carlson. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're whipping right through it. Maybe we'll be done by 6:05. Okay, next is the,
Commissioner Barofsky?
Yes.
Pardon the interruption. Just a note going forward. It is part of official protocol now that whenever there is a vote relative to action, that you identify that it's either unanimous or if there are votes in favor of or opposed to, that you actually roster out who is voted affirmatively or negatively.
okay. Thank you very much. I will store that in my,
We took the ethics class.
I know who took the ethics class, and she said, you know, well, you took it.
all right, do we need to go back and do that, or if you captured it?
Our minutes recorder will capture that in the minutes, but if there were an instance where someone
Voted
was in
against.
opposition, we'd want to call that out.
All right, sounds good. Next is oh, I'm sorry.
One quick point of order. Are we supposed, just because we just voted on action items, are we supposed to hold the public hearing before those action items are voted on?
There's no statutory requirement to do that.
Consent
Commissioner.
calendar?
The consent calendar. I mean, if there were items that people wanted to do a hearing on and they were opposed to. Anyway, maybe just something to consider in the future when we have this, if we're early on the.
I certainly agree with Commissioner Carlson that in standard practice, that would be the most appropriate thing to do. Given that we're ahead of, I don't know that there's anything controversial. I think as general practice, that would be what we would want to do, just as a governing body. However, there's no statutory requirement to do that.
Okay, well, that could be difficult, seeing how most of the items are action items. So we would just be sitting for 15 minutes. But anyways, that being said, do we want to hold off on doing the rest of the action items now? The number 10 is election of officers.
I'd like to move a slate.
Go ahead.
John Barofsky for president and Mindy Schlossberg for vice president.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Opposed? Okay. Next is appointment of board liaisons and committees. And do we have this up on the screen of what our ones that we have now are? Tim, for you, these are standing boards and committees that we kind of have slotted in. There's nothing that says anybody is wed to these. So if there's something that you're interested in and want to be a part of, please express it. The rest of us, the same thing goes for that. No, okay. Then we will go to.
I can drop it in the chat for those of you who are
Commissioner Barofsky, would you just like me to read those off one at a
Yeah,
time?
let's do it.
First one is Lane Council Governments. Presently, the primary is Sonia Carlson and John Barofsky is the backup.
And I'd be happy to relinquish the backup of that if that's something that you might be interested in. I haven't had to use it. Sonia is very diligent in that position.
Well, isn't Sonia in kind of a hierarchy of the executive committee, and she's worked her way up the ladder, and I would be very strong in supporting Sonia to continue that position if that's what she wants to do.
I would, yeah, I'm currently the chair, so it would be good to continue forth if possible.
Is that something you'd be interested in as the alternate?
Yeah, I'd be happy to serve as an alternate if that's desired by, yeah.
Yeah. Got to give you something.
But we're not done.
Oh, no.
It's first of many.
Okay. Go ahead. Do we want to do them? We'll do them individually or?
I do them individually, I
Okay.
think.
So. You want a motion on all of these?
I'll move that Sonia Carlson as LCOG primary and Tim Morris as backup for EWEB representatives.
All right, second. All in favor? Aye, unanimous. Okay, next up.
Next up is Mackenzie Watershed Council. John Barofsky is presently the primary serving in that role. There is no designated commissioner as the alternate. Generally, there's a significant amount of staff involvement with the Mackenzie Watershed Council as well.
Yeah, and that's one where we have a staff member who is on the Mackenzie Watershed Alliance board. So that's the actually governing board that oversees the Watershed Council. So we are fairly represented. I would love to continue on that if it's the will of the commission board. Sorry.
I'd move that John Barofsky be appointed a primary representative for EWEB for Mackenzie Watershed Council.
All in favor? Aye, unanimous.
Next on the roster is the Mackenzie Watershed Alliance Executive Board. There is no EWEB commissioner designated in that role, which oversees the Mackenzie Watershed Council. Don't know that there has historically been a board member in that role either. That's typically been a staff role, but if commissioners did have an interest, we could explore that, and maybe I should explore that before we come back to it.
Yeah, and I can give a little, like I said, that one, we have a staff member who is in that position. And it's a little bit more, it's a very small, I think there's 5 people that oversee that. And so it's like the executive committee for the Watershed Council. And that's something that she's been doing a great job on. And so I would just continue to let her be the point person on that rather than have a commissioner fill that spot.
No reason to vote on that.
No reason to vote on that one.
Next on the roster is the other post-employment benefits, OPEB representative. Currently, it's John Brown. There's no designated alternate. This is a non-voting position that oversees and guides part of the trust for a benefit that is really just no longer in existence. It's for past employees, but the board has representation on that. It's currently served by John Brown.
Can I speak to that? Not that I kind of value the time that I donate, and you're a non-voting member. So basically every quarter you sit there and listen, and that's all you do. And I don't mind doing it and everything, but I just want to know what value, if any, does a board member bring to the table by using that time? Is there another committee or thing somebody could do that would be better served? Is there a requirement that a board member be there?
Follow up on that.
We can call,
Because I
we
mean,
can follow up on that.
I'll sit there but you got to realize I don't get to vote, and I listen, and that's all I do. And I could do it at home or whatever, but I'm just saying, it's not that I don't like, I don't have to have the microphone. It's just that, what, is there a better place somebody could put their volunteer time if it's not a requirement?
Yeah, Commissioner Brown, I think that it's, if it's required by the charter, then obviously we would want either your continuance on that or another board member. The primary role, I think, has been historically around guidance if there were significant changes in the contributions from EWEB into the trust, to have at least a board perspective on what the impact and what the board's perspective might be. Not that you would be voting or representing a vote in this body, but it would give staff and the other managers of that trust the opportunity to gauge what the board would feel like if there was a significant contribution that needed to be made from the EWEB funds. And so I think that's been historically the role. It's been pretty benign in the last number of years because it's well funded and the investments have garnered good returns. But we can maybe postpone a vote on this relative to checking the charter. If
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I would be more than glad to step up again and do it, and you can appoint me to that position. But if there's a point that, it's easier to say, stay home, I can do that. But, because I mean, this year's contribution is less than $200,000 on a $20 million deal, and we're going to run it right through the budget, and that's it. And so I'm more than willing to do that.
Yeah, if there is no requirement for a commissioner to be on that board, we can commit as staff to bring the results of those investments back to this board on a quarterly basis, which would be part of what your role would be, or not on a quarterly basis, semi-annually, I believe. And so we could act in that capacity if possible.
Fine.
Tim,
Yeah, thank you. So if there is no constitutional reason for a board member to be represented, would it make sense to instead, if a board member or a board perspective is needed, to then put it on the agenda for us to vote on to appoint someone at that time? So rather than do it today, if we know that significant changes are coming, do it the month before.
Given, if I may, given the fact that you look at the future agendas, they're pretty tough, and to jam this up in the schedule, just go ahead and appoint me now. And then I can quit, or do something. We'll figure this out. I just wanted to bring that up.
We can fire him.
Yeah, I can. I've been fired from a lot of jobs. I'm okay with that. So
I just wanted to offer that it might actually just be helpful to have somebody there as sort of a watchdog of sorts. I mean, maybe things don't happen in part because they're, it's being watched. Not entirely. I mean, I'm sure there are totally competent people there, but I think it's just helpful to have somebody at the table. And I appreciate if he's willing to do it, to sit there and, hold people accountable. That's all.
I do want to say that we value your contribution and we appreciate the time that you give to that. And I will follow up as to whether or not it says may or is required in the charter. I don't want to commit until
May or shall.
it again. May or shall.
Procedurally, I would suggest we go ahead and
and
if you really want John Brown to do it, that the board.
well,
appoints him
and
to do that.
I would offer up to be the alternate because I'm a numbers guru. And so if you want to miss a meeting, you can call me and I'll sit in and do it as well, because it does have a position for an alternate.
that's fine.
Right. Move John Brown as the primary and John Barofsky as the alternate.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Unanimous. Right, next, looks like City of Eugene. Oh, no, wait, sorry, Springfield Utility Board. Right now, that was one of Matt's things, and so I don't know much about that position. Frank, can you share with us, or John Brown, have you sat with that one before?
I'm on Lane Electric, so it's similar. You just kind of a liaison, and Lane Electric has their meetings in Florence and Oak Ridge and Cottage Grove, and sometimes it's hard to chase until they're here, and their meetings are 8 hours long. And so, yeah. And so, I've only been to a couple, but not for 8 hours. But sub is just very similar to us. And it's just kind of a liaison, just a communication type of thing. There's no requirement of any attendance or anything. It's just it's just a communication thing to say we're here if you want us.
Frank,
Yeah, I would also add that the liaisons with a number of the other government agencies as well as the other utilities provide staff also a means for governance and commissioners to speak with each other if for some reason we need something. There's an opportunity for a commissioner to speak to a commissioner or a director in some of these cases, and it opens up the possibilities for that. Right now, fortunately, we have very good working relationships at the staff and management level with many of these organizations, but many of these liaison positions are to ensure that continues at different levels. And so that's part of the role in this case, is just develop a dialogue and have that relationship.
okay, so I would look for somebody to volunteer for this position. All right,
I'll stay on lane, but I'm not gonna go to Florence for an 8-hour meeting. I'll just say that right now, but they do have meetings here. So.
all right, I'll look for a motion.
Schlossberg as the contact for Springfield Utility Board.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. All right, next is Lane Electrical Co-op. And
Move John Brown as the designated commissioner for Lane Electric Cooperative.
okay, anybody, there is an opportunity for a alternate if anybody's interested, but all in favor? Aye. All right. City of Eugene. Yeah, okay. So that would be myself and Mindy. We meet quarterly with the city, or we try to meet quarterly with the city, let's put it that way. City of Springfield. As of right now, we have Mindy and John Brown as the alternates.
Yeah, I mean, we had one meeting. There's not a lot of work to be done there at this point, so I'm happy to keep it unless somebody's really itching to work with the city of Springfield.
No, I'd stay there too. I think the liaison, because of the land use issues in Glenwood with second source water and all that, still need to be, we still have to have that communication level and that, hi John type of thing, communication. So I'd be more than glad to stay there. And I think it's important that we keep that tie until at least what we get through Glenwood.
Are you saying you want that
Yes.
position?
I'd take it. I know the mayor and several of the councilors quite well in the city
Great.
manager. So,
I'm happy to,
I mean, if
I'm happy to pass that on to you.
we'll do some trading later. Thank you.
Yes, Frank.
Yeah, President Barofsky, I would note exactly what Commissioner Brown mentioned regarding working together on the Willamette treatment plant. I would also note that they have a new city councilor who covers Glenwood, which is an opportunity to introduce EWEB and our project to another member of council in Springfield.
Right. This one does have an alternate possibility.
I'm also willing to offer as well.
Okay.
I think I've
Great.
only been assigned one committee, so I'm happy
Okay.
to step up as well.
Well, I'm willing to move John Brown as the primary and Tim Morris as the alternate for the city of Springfield.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, that does it. That puts us at 6:05. Anybody sign up?
No.
Or call in? Okay, public input is, we got my, cities. I would like to open the public hearing, or it's not a public hearing, it's public comment. So I don't know if it's statutorily, but I'll open it. And seeing nobody, I will close it. Okay. Next on the agenda, we're moving right through things, is the proposed 2025 strategic goals and organizational performance measures.
President Barofsky, commissioners, good evening. Really appreciate Again, welcome to 2025. Wanted to present you this evening with what we see based on your feedback from last month and through some of our individual check-ins, what our organizational annual goals will look like or being proposed as for 2025. Just a couple of pieces of background and context. This is part of a normal process. It's one that is required by board policy. It's important that under a model like we have, where there's a significant amount of delegated authority, that the objectives of the board through the general manager into the organization are well understood, and that's captured in board policy BL4. Along with that, again, this is part of a process that we adjust and we work on throughout the year. There's a number of different pieces that weigh into what ultimately become the annualized goals for the organization. Everything from strategic plans to operational and quarterly pieces of feedback that you provide. We go through a budgetary and prioritizing process. We look for themes, which we presented last month, areas of opportunity as we see them, either based on performance or where we are strategically in our progress on the strategic plan, and therefore bring back this month for this meeting some proposed specific language that we think captures the intent of the annual goals as we want to progress through. I will also note that part of establishing the annual goals is also it establishes the information that we will be reporting back to the board and working with the board on throughout the year, and developing metrics around throughout the process to gauge our progress. Overall, really 3 business priorities are captured in the goals. The first one has very much to do with the 24/7, 365 operational requirements that we have, what it means to be effective and efficient as we work throughout the year. That's captured in a couple of goals that tend to be a little bit more operational. We then have some strategic interests and priorities. One, and these came out of the strategic plan. One is aligned with energy delivery, recognizing that there's significant dynamics occurring across the world, internal and external to our industry, and working with customers to create value over the long term. And then both from a water perspective as well as an electric perspective, improved resiliency, and it captures and the board worked with staff and created a resiliency policy which we're leveraging over the next few years. Specifically, without getting into the language of, and I'll get into the language of the stated goals, this is really intended to capture the fact that we've identified 7 organizational goals for 2025. They will each have very specific milestones that we will also develop as part of this process. Some of those are aligned again with operational requirements, and the intent of this particular slide is just to show that some goals are aligned with several different drivers, including some of them strategic, resiliency, for example. Some are very much driven by newly developed policy that the board has put forth, particularly around resiliency, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and climate, and some of those areas of interest from a community perspective. But the intent here is really to show that of these goals, almost all of them have multiple benefits and multiple points where they align either with our operational improvement goals or with our strategic goals. I won't read these verbatim. They were provided in the backgrounder. There were 7 goals. Typically, what we've done is to state the action up front, maintain or improve a certain objective, followed by some conditional phrases related to either why that particular goal exists, either, kind of tying it back to the various drivers, or in some cases creating conditions around that particular action item or the thing that would be driven, the actions that would be driven by that goal. Again, there's 7. The first one definitely relates to operational efficiency. Part of this is to be very intentional and to really improve, I'll say improve our benchmarking and our KPIs as part of this, including reporting back to the board specifically on type 2 and type 3 projects. These are our larger strategic projects, including scope, schedule, and budget. We're looking at how we want to define, particularly the type 2 projects. What constitutes a type 2 project is presently defined in a board policy. We're evaluating whether we would recommend a change to that or not. The other piece of this is to also look at where we want to apply continuous improvement. And I think it's important to be able to establish the measurements as part of that. The second goal relates to resiliency specifically. There's 2 things associated with that. One is succession planning, which I know the commissioners brought up last month, recognizing that we have certain leadership in vulnerable positions throughout the organization, really looking at intentionally working on bench strength in certain areas and doing that also in a way that's consistent and evolving through our dynamic workforce model. And that's in particularly setting the environment of which we operate. It's not specific to hybrid work or telework, but is very intentionally driven, recognizing that different parts of our organization have different needs, and to create a resilient workforce, we need to make sure that we're managing, driving, motivating, working together well across the organization. And the dynamic workforce model captures that, but it needs some continuous improvement, continuous refinement. The third one is very much to do with the work that the board is familiar with around making a decision related to the Bonneville Power Administration contract and potentially other resource contracts as they evolve over the next year or two, specifically aligned with some other conditional requirements, such as looking at how it aligns with the flexibility associated with future business models, our demand side potential assessment and what that means. That's results that are coming shortly, and some of our other modeling and analysis and customer programs that will be evolving there as well. The last set of goals on this particular slide, again, some of these align with different aspects of things that the board has presented are important. We do see an opportunity to improve the impact and reach of our customer care program. That has very much to do with inclusive and equity that we think there's an opportunity to do, and also look at the implementation of a prepay program before the end of the third quarter. End of the third quarter was picked specifically because we want to know where that program and launch that program before we get into the budgeting for next year and the rate impacts for next year. Prepay has some definite benefits to those with limited cash, in particular those with limited incomes and limited cash, and being able to prepay and not have EWEB require a larger deposit is significantly important to those members of our community. The other part of that goal on the customer care recognizes that right now it's a fairly blunt instrument, I would describe, where there's a one-time credit issued to people. If you couple that with prepay and potentially could, I'll say, preload the credit card for some people at different levels over time, it really becomes more aligned with the customer need as opposed to, oh, this is sort of one size fits all, which is how it feels at the moment. So we see there's some improvement there. Continuing with rate design on goal number 5 is to recognize that we need to prepare for certain things. This may or may not be implemented at the end of of 2025, but recognizing that we have some areas where there may be some opportunities to explore some different elements of rate design, residential demand charges, which start to get recognized that there are certain times when it's more expensive, certain times that the electricity is more carbon intense, and really managing peaks, which we believe is one of the important criteria as we look forward, and recognizing and now analyzing the impact of that from a rate design perspective is part of that preparation. Again, this is a preparatory goal with a lot of different data pieces to it, and not necessarily coming to the board and saying we want to do this starting at the end of 2025 or the beginning of 2026. But we think we need to have the conversation around what that's going to look like. Rate design is interesting to talk about right up to the point when you actually have to implement it, and it impacts all 150,000 different accounts that we have. And so this is a way to facilitate some of those discussions. The other part of the, as you know, we recently launched a new customer system and a new financial system, and we do plan to operationalize that further and take a significant part of 2025, continuing to improve those particular modules or systems. We also want to take 2025 to prepare for the asset management and field services management portions of the new system, which we plan to work on in 2026 and 2027. For those, I know at least one commissioner was around when we did the last work at asset management plan, also known as WAM. One of the lessons learned from that was it's not about the system. It's about how you're managing your assets and how you're managing your work and how you're preparing your processes that's going to make that project successful. And just changing a system without this preparation will not prove to be as effective as it would, which we saw with our customer systems and our financial systems. A significant amount of work went into documenting the different over 100 processes from start to finish, everything from move in to move out processes to bill collection processes to registering and just a number of different things. And so we have to do the same when we're looking to convert our asset management systems. We do manage almost $1.4 billion worth of assets. And so this is an important part of how we manage that process and that work. Finally, goal number 7 is a result of the fact that there's several board policies out there, including an environmental policy and a climate change policy. We also know there's some external changes occurring in how that accounting is done, how carbon accounting, for example, is done. We also know that some of the original goals that we had that we presented to the board that were originating, I believe, in 2008, 2009, based on 2010 base level or benchmarks, had specific goals for 2025, of which we've been on target, but very little between 2025 and 2050. And so we think there's an opportunity to actually figure out and not wait till 2050 to figure out how these particular policies integrate with the work that we're doing. And so this is a combination of both external changes, policies that we think we need to align with, and work that we need to integrate with the other things that we're doing. So that was an area that we saw that was important to us. With that, President Barofsky, these are proposed. So there's a couple of different options that the board has, anywhere from adopting these as proposed to adopting with amendments or sending us back to the drawing board to start over. All those are acceptable options. We hope that you consider these to be well thought out at this point, but at this time I would turn it back to you. And if you want me to just post these goals, I can do that rather than I can go back to one of these if if you'd prefer. But would like to get, hopefully the board's approval of these annual goals, or have any dialogue or guidance that's necessary.
Great, thank you. Sonia?
Generally, I'm very supportive of the goals that are outlined. The one thing that sticks out to me is that I've now been here 8 years. And one of the things that I cared very much about, and I know the board has mentioned a number of times, is how do we tackle helping with the disconnect between renters and owners and efficiency improvements. And it struck me that maybe having it as a outlined goal would shine some more light on that. So I just wanted to share that thought with the other commissioners and see if there are any thoughts there. Seeing a couple of head nods.
Mindy?
I agree with you, Sonia. I realize that it's a difficult problem to tackle, and it's not necessarily all of on us, but I do feel like it is something that we talk about a lot as a board, but we haven't really seen any movement in that. And I'm guessing, like, if the board were all to write what our goals were for the organization, that would probably be one that most of us came up with. So I'm supportive of that.
John?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with both of what you've said, and somehow if that's the consensus of the board, I'd like to see it interjected into this, because that was one of the things I was going to bring up later about just looking at June's schedule. Everything there is recurring, and we're a half hour over schedule. How do we get our ideas to the table and get them implemented if we can't do it here? When does it happen, and how does it happen? So I'm in 100% agreement with you, because that thing about the renters and how we're going to tackle that, talked about this when Smud came and gave a presentation and everything else. I'm ready to do something.
Tim?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to share my extreme support behind that as well. And I just wanted to highlight, I think the last year in November, during the conversation of who EWEB is, it was brought up multiple times of reaching out to lower income and renter communities. And so I just want to lend my support of that as well. I think it falls in line with the strategic plan. I think it falls in line with many of the mission and vision of EWEB. And I think it's a good goal for 2025 forward.
I'll weigh in. I think there's pretty much a consensus around the table that that's something that we want to look into. I think that we might be able to fit it into some of the goals that are up there. I think if you look at number 4, customer care, and number 7, climate, it can kind of dovetail into some of those, I think. If we put an emphasis in those two and said that that's something that we're looking for, customer care and the incentives is one thing that, we're doing a good job and we're working on doing a better job on. To me, I think it's going to come down to, we're going to need to incentivize the landlords to do this, because we can't just keep throwing the money at the people who are paying our bills. If we really want to get to the root of the problem, it's going to be getting the landlords to have more efficient systems and weatherization and those types of things, which benefits the renter because their bills will be going down. And to me, that's the hardest part, because the incentive isn't there right now for a landlord. Right now, the landlord isn't paying, in most cases, isn't paying the utility bills. So it's tough, because you look at it and you go, well, you can't be giving incentives to these rich developers and landlords who are profiting off of these people that can't pay their bills. But yet, if we don't incentivize them somehow, it's never going to happen. And so to me, that's the quandary that we have going forward. How to fit that into our strategic plans. I think, like I said, if we beefed up a couple of those and inserted that into number 4 and number 7, because if we increase in efficiencies, that's going to help our climate goals. If we improve, lower the bills, that kind of helps in customer care. I don't know if we need to do a separate bullet. I think that everybody around this board feels that that's appropriate. The rest of these I think are well thought out and taken care of. So that's kind of where I land on this. Some of these are not going to be done in 2025, but they're getting a start in 2025. And I think that's where I would like to see this type of an incentive move forward. Sonia, and then Tim.
I'm not opposed necessarily to incorporating it in one or the other. My only caveat, I guess, there is that it's how it gets. I was taught what gets measured or what gets managed gets measured. And so if you are measuring how well we're doing in that, it's really about how these translate into those measurements. And so if it's couched in with one of the other one, are we measuring it in the same way, I guess is my question. So as long as the outcome is that we are measuring it and we're tracking it quarterly and we're, putting intentional thought behind it, whatever that looks like and what we decide as a board, then I'm fine with it being combined in. But if it needs to be its own bullet to get measured, then I guess that's where I would come in.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Morris, then I'll come to you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily agree with including it couched into some of these other goals. I think that more than half of the city of Eugene rents their home, and therefore it's important for us to be able to include it as a separate bullet point. I think also the customer care program, correct me if I'm wrong, is geared towards lower income folks. And I don't disagree at all that the working towards landlords to update and upgrade their systems supports the environmental impact. But I think that this board has talked consistently about reaching out and communicating with the renter community and connecting with them. And I don't think that that's outlined exclusively and specifically in these goals. So I would support pulling out and highlighting specifically outreach to the renter community.
Right.
Did you want to go first, Commissioner?
No, go ahead.
So just a couple pieces of context. I wouldn't necessarily propose if the board wants to pursue something related to energy efficiency or outreach to the rental community, rental in combination potentially with limited income. Those can be two distinct groups. I wouldn't necessarily think it would be better to weave those into what we have. I do agree with Commissioner Carlson. Oftentimes you manage what you measure. I'm not, but one of those. So I would probably look for some kind of distinct goal around it, or an incorporation into goal number one potentially, if we're looking to benchmark and identify key performance measures that we want the organization to pursue. The other piece of context I want to make sure that we're pretty clear on, if you're looking to energy efficiency, especially subsidized energy efficiency, which is what we're talking about here, that really isn't a cost saving measure. Those come with costs. And if you're looking, which definitely impact rates. And so if the board wants a goal around increasing, and to your point, President Barofsky, actually paying a landlord to do things that they might not normally do, it is someone else paying that bill for them. And so that comes at a rate cost. So there is a trade-off here between what we're looking to do for one group versus another group. And I just want to make sure that that's clear. The other thing is that I'm not sure we fully understand, or the board fully understands exactly where we are as a starting point. We do have the demand side potential assessment study that we're doing. Those results are coming quickly here very shortly, and Brian, which will give us an assessment of what this looks like in our community. We have done energy efficiency at over 60,000 individual residences over the last several decades. I'm not sure it's fair to say that we haven't done a lot with rentals. I'm not sure that that's a fair thing to say until we actually look at what this data is telling us. And so, and most newer buildings in Eugene, a lot of those are multifamily. They're new construction standards. They're much different than the individual, like my parents' house, the 1953 single pane window, baseboard heat kind of house. So I think if we want to do a goal like that, we're not necessarily opposed to it. I think we would want to understand the basis of which we're starting from, and recognizing if there is an opportunity here that the board wants to invest in, and I'll say invest in, then that should be based on a nice solid understanding of where we're starting from.
John?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, this defies basic business logic. I mean, to spend money to sell less of the product and raise rates to do it. But I got to remind myself that we're a public agency and we're here to serve the public, and this is theirs. I mean, if it made economic sense, landlords would do it. And so I think, Tim, your point about reaching out to the tenants is important, but it's more important to reach out to the landlords, because the tenants can't do any of this without the landlord's consent. You can't just go dump windows in an apartment or a ductless heat pump or anything else. The landlord has to have buy-in on this. And so we have to, I think, to get them there to do that. But also, you're absolutely right. It'll never get done. Landlords will do it if it makes economic sense. It doesn't. And so we're going to have to do it. And if we have to raise rates, so be it. I mean, some areas have better service than others in this community, and it's not because we do that on purpose, but 50% of our rental pool and the people that are most vulnerable need this. And this is a commodity they don't have a choice on. So I'm going to raise rates to, whatever it is, we got to do it. And so I'm all for it. So.
And Commissioner Brown, there are mechanisms by which a tenant can work, bring things to a landlord, right, including income qualification that we've facilitated. But you're right, there are certain things that the landlord must approve at some point.
Oh yeah, you're not going to put something in the window or even change an electrical box or change a cadet heater to anything. You've got to have their buy-in. So I think it's important we communicate that all of them and get them on buy-in.
Sonia?
So if we put it in the first measure, then it gets, or in the first metric, then it gets measured in a specific way in KPIs, or are you saying it wouldn't if it's in the other ones? Can you speak to that quick?
Well, yes, I can. There's a couple ways if you want to garner the attention of measurement that you referred to. One of them would be that in goal number 1, we typically say we want to operate really well, and then we'll, as an add-on to that, have an emphasis in certain areas where we see opportunities. Those areas in this case might be an assessment and outreach of the opportunities for the rental programs. Okay. That, because it would be stated that way in goal 1, we would develop specific metrics that would guide that particular achievement of that goal. And so it would probably be a fair assessment to direct staff in this case to add a clause to goal number 1 that would highlight the board's interest in further penetrating the rental market with our programs, or something to that effect.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would like to see, I'm glad that we're doing the benchmarking study. I think it's something that we've been asking for a while. So that absolutely has to happen. And then from that, we can say, okay, here's the current state. Where do we go from here? And, that has been challenging for many years to get. So I'm thankful that that's moving forward. I want it to be measured. So if we have to put it in 1 to get that, I'm okay with that. Otherwise, I'm strong supporter of having it be its own separate thing, because it's something that we've struggled with for a long time, and I would really like it to get that intentionality. I also want to say that I don't think it's only that we have to pay money into it. I think that we could, yes, it is a staff devotion, but we could go after grants to support getting money to do that. We could also work with our partners and go after legislation that could potentially tackle that in a different way. The city is considering opportunities for how they tackle it. So how do we partner with them? I think there's other ways besides just throwing money at it that we might be able to get some traction. And I just want, again, to explore those opportunities, see what other groups do to get that. So I would support sending this back to staff to put some language together in some form or fashion to accomplish what we've said, and unless others want to vote on it this evening, but that's my suggestion.
Indy.
I feel like I'm in favor of it being its own goal. And I realize when you look at the goals, I mean, some of these goals are huge, like the BPA one, and maybe to leadership or management, this seems much smaller, but I do think that it is of such importance to this board that it does warrant some attention. And I'm also supportive of, in the future, like the way to address it is maybe to have a work session or something where we could just delve into that topic. And again, I realize for the leadership, it might not rise to the same level as some of the other goals that are here, but for us as board members and what our roles are, I do think that it's important to all of us.
Tim.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Carlson, for saying nearly everything I was about to say. So I appreciate that. I wanted to highlight as well that I don't think that it's just a throw money at problem situation, but what I've been highlighting is communication and connection with the tenant community. I think that the landlord during these processes gives the thumbs up, but the tenant is the one that opens the door and lets them in, especially to their homes as well. And to your point of there's grants that are available to help support some of these efforts. There's also local organizations and local communities that are working with both landlords and tenants to help update their homes or help redefine what utility bills look like to them. And I think it overall supports our mission as well because it increases efficiency, it lowers the drain on many of these homes that were built in the 70s and are just wildly inefficient. So I think overall it makes sense to have it separated out, and I would agree to send it back for additional language.
So the question that I would have to staff would be, could we move forward with these 5 and you bring back another one and we amend it at a further date, or do you want to hold off on all of these?
If the board is comfortable with the goals as presented, I would want to move forward with those goals. If the board would like an additional one related to, I'll say the effectiveness of our approach into the rental market, which again, I think we have to establish the jump off point as part of that. I would propose that we bring something back at a future meeting for that. And when I say future meeting, February. Approve these, bring one with the direction to bring one back.
To amend the goal.
7 wasn't enough. We've got to go for 8 here. So we'll go for 8. And I think it is a separate goal. That way the board can definitely put its stamp on it as well. And we would approve these tonight with the instructions to bring back an additional one relative to this subject in February.
Yeah, and I would be in favor of that because I don't want to just, I'm not a fan of legislating on the fly. I like to have, especially when we're doing year-long goals, have staff be able to formulate something that we can look at and dig into. So I'm comfortable with that direction.
I move to approve the 7 and direct staff to bring back the 8th to around rental disconnect, rental owner disconnect and inefficiencies.
Second.
Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Okay. It is 6:40. We're scheduled for a break, but we only have a couple more items on the agenda. Do you guys want to just push through? All right.
I'd say push through.
I do too. We're gonna have a record here. We'll be out by 7 o'clock and
What a great first
I'll be president for life. General manager's performance evaluation criteria.
So commissioners, this is really the opportunity right after we established almost all of the organizational goals for the year, sans hopefully just one additional one. If this is an opportunity for the board to provide any other sort of direction or expectation setting of the general manager at this point during the year. I can tell you that for me, our process presently works pretty well. In particular, when we get together as part of my review process for the previous year in March, we do use the annual goals and including a number of operational metrics, safety metrics, other things aligned with our values as part of that performance. That weighs heavily on me, but if there was anything else that the board wanted to consider going forward, then this would be the opportunity to establish that expectation.
Right. So for those of people watching, there was an informational part in our packet that goes through what the actual criteria is and procedures for evaluating the general manager. At this point, I would ask commissioners if there's any questions or changes or amendments that you guys would like to talk about. So
I guess I would just note that, so last year we outlined the process for how we would evaluate you this year. Right? So that's what's outlined in here. So part of what are we talking about tonight, what we would do next year? Or is it only if we wanted to make any changes midterm to that? Because I don't advocate for making changes mid-year for how we set up and how we said we would evaluate you. I just don't think that that's personally fair to the general manager, but I just wanted to check in on what the expectation is here.
I think is generally at this point, the process that was outlined last year, we actually, for the most part, implemented last year. There is a part of that process that if there's criteria that or expectations that they want the general manager to work on in the year upcoming, so that would be in this case 2025, that the best opportunity to do that would be to identify that at the beginning of the year. So we're at the beginning of the year. So this is really, if there's any additional criteria other than that's outlined either in the many active resolutions, board policies, values, strategic plans, budgets, or annual goals that you wanted to evaluate me on, then this is a good opportunity to identify that.
Otherwise, I just wanted to note that, in the past, we've talked about, if we wanted to do a 360-degree review, or if there were other types of review processes. I don't personally think that that's necessary right now, but this was the time I think that we had allotted if that was an interest.
And I would know one change that I had done personally, but we codified last year was that whoever is in charge of our workforce services or our human resources department does do an internal survey of direct reports of me relative to certain subjects that we want to evaluate. And we did implement that last year and presented the results. And so that was something that kind of incorporated a little bit of the 360 review process, of which I kind of go through with my staff as anyway, but it was another opportunity to do that.
Other comments or questions, Cindy?
I guess, is there anything that you would like to be done differently or added?
No. I think that, again, I mentioned it earlier, this is an interesting governance model, a little bit different than some of the other public utilities. There's a pretty significant amount of delegated authority. I think that I think it's incredibly important in this model, the relationship that whoever the chief executive general manager has with the board is incredibly important. Collectively as a board, but also as individual commissioners. In this model in particular, I think that's very important, and I feel like we're in a good spot with that. So I wouldn't. I also, to Commissioner Carlson's comment about changing midstream, I think there are times when, as a group, we may look at something and go, we're going down a path that doesn't make sense and we need to course correct. And I think we have to be willing to do that as well. And you have to feel comfortable that a general manager is willing to take a step back once in a while and go, are we really going the right direction here? Or do we need to change? And so as much as we really lean into the goals and some of the policies for guidance, if there's ever a situation I feel like I need to bring to the board to course correct on, I feel comfortable doing that. If that wasn't the case, I might feel a little bit differently about, getting one shot at this a year. And I don't think we have one shot. We have at least 25 that I can think of. Well, actually more than that. 60 different opportunities.
Okay, any other questions? The only comment I would make is I think we kind of chewed this over pretty heavily last year. It's always one of the more uncomfortable situations that we have as a board because we have to do part of it in executive session and part of it in public. And so that makes it a little boogie. It would be the term that I would use. But as far as the process, I think it's good. The other thing to consider is that this is a process that I look at not evaluating Frank. I look at it as evaluating the position because we don't know who's going to be in the position going forward. So for right now, the metrics and the things that we have in there, I think would be a good template for whoever is sitting in that chair. And that's what I look for on this type of a policy, not personally, how is Frank doing on this one? And can I tailor it to him? It's the position, not the person. So that's where I'm at and I'm comfortable with it. Right. Any other talks on that? Okay, then that looks to future board agendas.
I should have this memorized. I don't have it quite memorized. I will make one course correction. President Barofsky, I did the water master plan is actually going to be it's been pushed from February to June.
Okay.
I don't know if that's still an acceptable time frame. It's the next check-in point for that one.
Absolutely, that's fine. That's
okay.
just something when you do it, if you could bring some of that information that I asked for, that would be more than adequate.
Yep, we certainly can. The other intent will be, I would like to sit down with the president and vice president now that we have the goals established and take another look very specifically at the board agenda report. Some of these goals should require more check-ins than others, and we can map out the year to make it the most productive we can for the board, recognizing that there's some recurring events that we could either push to correspondence or keep, we'll have those discussions. But I will schedule some time with the president and vice president to walk through that.
Excellent. Anybody else have any questions about future board agendas? Yes.
So May and June, 100% of the agenda items are recurring. And so, and in June, we're 30 minutes over already, but we've got a meeting, a 4.5 hour meeting, which I don't think makes everybody here happy. Is there a way you can look to smooth that out? Because we have meetings blanketing both sides that have 100 minutes left and just kind of move something around so we don't have those 4.5 hour meetings?
Yes, answer it directly. Yes. There's also a couple of other issues going on with June. I know of at least one commissioner that won't be present in June. I will probably miss my first board meeting ever in June because my wife and I are going on a vacation. I would say the first one ever, but that part's not quite true. We will certainly do that, Commissioner. That's the intent, is to balance this out, look at how the goals relate to that and fit in with that agenda, and try to keep the meetings as productive and balanced as we can.
Yeah, because I was like saying, like in June, if something came up, we don't have any room on the agenda to where it's all just recurrent. Same thing with May. There's like 30 minutes. I just thinking that if someday we want to put something in there or have a discussion, it's just not there. And if we can see that in the future, if we could kind of work towards it, that would be appreciated by you.
Yeah, the intent is to do that. The other intent is that I think we have a couple of placeholders for potential work sessions. If there's an emerging issue or something that we want to take a little deeper dive on, we can. Again, the goal for me, now that we've established the goals for the year, is to work with the president and the vice president to lay out the year in a little more of a detailed way.
Mindy.
In our smoothing process, I see that next month we still have a light meeting and it's my birthday. So I'm just in favor of keeping that meeting light, but obviously we're gonna do what we have to do. But I have a question about the work session. Do we think that we are having a work session in February?
I'm not sure. I mean,
Okay.
I have to sit down now and look at the goals. I'm not sure.
Tim?
Any other birthdays?
Oh, yeah, come
board
on.
meetings?
We'll get to.
Mine's
Okay.
April. We're good. Thank you, Commissioner. I'm looking to you to ask this question. Is this an appropriate time to bring up a potentially missing topic on future board agendas, or to try to schedule or put something on the calendar for a future board?
Yeah.
I appreciate that. In my onboarding and learning about everything that this EWEB does, one thing that I noticed is in March of 23, the board had discussed a reoccurring living document of the DEI policies. And I have been also reviewing what annually this board is going to be reviewing, and I don't see what the DEI policy review or what the implementation of that looks like. So I don't have a specific month to advocate for or anything along those lines, but to just include, since its passage in October, what quantified metrics have happened. I think also where two major changes have happened, with including the retirement of Rod Price, and he led the charge on that. And so I think it'd be important to re-review that and make sure that there's no missing pieces during that job. Thank you.
Okay. And we can talk about that when the three of us meet and figure if there's a appropriate time, or if that's a correspondence issue or something like that we can put forward. Yes.
President Barofsky, and I do know that there is internal work going on around execution of the DEI policy and where it fits, how we're incorporating that into our work as part of standard process. The one clarification that I would like to get before we get together on the agenda is, and then I'll just ask Commissioner Morris, are you specifically referring to the board's work around DEI or staff's work around DEI? Those are separate issues.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I am curious about the metrics from the staff's perspective. I've seen the passage and some of the implementation of the goals of the passage of the DEI, and I'm curious if those have been accomplished, or if there's any missing pieces from there, and if there's any input from the board of directors that you might need from that.
Okay.
For me, September 2nd is 25th anniversary, and I will be getting on a big old boat to go across the Atlantic Ocean on that day. So last year in September, I was remoting in from Italy. This time I don't think I can remote in, so I'll probably be missing that one. Just a heads up to you, Mindy. And then Tim, just for your information, and this is something that I learned from Commissioner Brown, is if at any time a commissioner wants to add something to the agenda, basically you put it out there, and if you can get 3 head nods, then it can move forward to the agenda. I think that's pretty much the process that it goes forward with. So I think that's where it's at, just kind of giving you an update on actually adding an item to an agenda is the way that we usually move with that. And it hasn't been a problem in the past. I don't think we've, I can only think of one time where it didn't make the agenda in my 4-year tenure. Okay, anybody else on future boards and agendas? Okay, we will go around and do board wrap up. We'll start with John Brown.
Thank you. Tim, good first meeting. I love the timing.
Happy to help.
Lane Electric, I don't know if you guys know this, just raised their rates like 8%, but they also raised their basic charge from $41 to $49 a month. Just whether you consume 1 kilowatt or a million, it's $50 a month, and that's twice as much as ours. And we may think about that. Just keep that food for thought and rate design, because that's, to me, it's a pretty smart move, but it's not as popular as it could be. And then the comment that Sonia made earlier about not having consent calendar before public input. Consent calendars have contracts. And are we inviting the public to comment on our contracts by doing that? I mean, in 20 years, we've never done it. Consent calendar used to be absolutely at the end of the meetings when I first started this. And then we had staff, we didn't have this remote thing. So staff had to sit there till 9:30, 10, 11 o'clock, just in case somebody asked a question. So we moved the consent calendars up. But we've never, at least I've never seen it, where we waited for public input, and I've never heard of any public input on any consent calendar item, sans the tree trimming issue we had, but that was post adoption of the contract. So I'm just thinking about the precedent we may establish if we put back and encourage or entice public comment on the consent calendar. Just throwing that out to you.
And maybe what we can do, we'll talk about it. Maybe we put the public comment earlier, it's like, put it as the second item, then we don't have to worry about action items or something like that.
I think there's different ways to handle it. We have had at times people who are protesting awards or things show up for comment. The consent usually will get comments around agenda-based action items, upcoming actions that the board is taking. There is a, state statutory procurement, highly regulated procurement process that we go through for these contracts. So generally, they've gone through a pretty thorough process. It's less important probably in that case, although like I said earlier, I think it's probably good practice, but not essential in the sense that if there's some adjustment, like tonight was a little bit of an adjustment. But I think historically, over the last couple of years, we've had public input, and then we've moved into the consent calendar after that. And I still think that's appropriate.
I mean, I know it doesn't
Sonia.
happen often, but there's another way to do it. We just structure the agenda such that it comes up and we put the other timepieces earlier. Not that we change the order, but we just say, okay, this is only 5 minutes, this is only 5 minutes. So then we're always a little bit after the actual time it starts. Alternatively, well, and the reason that I brought it up is that it seems somewhat analogous to the budget in some ways. If somebody has a protest against something that's of monetary value, we'd want people to be able to have their say on it. It doesn't come up often. I just wanted to make sure that, we're consistent, and we don't usually have that problem. So I don't think it's something we necessarily need to change every time. It's just maybe if it comes up in the future, we watch out for it. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would support keeping it as keeping it a little bit later. I think this is my first time coming from the audience, but I was able to see from that perspective, and there tends to be some latecomers, and I think we're on Eugene time quite a bit. So I think I hear what Commissioner Carlson is saying, and I do agree, but I think also just keeping room for for those who couldn't quite make it, and especially those who are taking public transportation. We've had a few people testify that they biked here, so making sure that we're leaving time for that as well.
Board wrap up. Mindy, anything for you? Any other wrap up for you? For me, no, thank you for electing me president. Hopefully I'll be able to have all of our meetings end by 7 o'clock. That will be my goal for the next year. And I'm sure that staff will help me out with that as much as they can.
We can do that every month if you would like, President Barofsky.
There you go. No time for comment.
I got one.
Frank, you're up.
So,
Anything from you?
I guess I had one last comment.
Yes.
So keeping in the spirit of everybody talked about the length of the meetings and trying to figure out how we could shorten them. We have a little red light that beeps up there when we're out of time. And if we could just be cognizant of that a little bit more, because I think policy, or not policy, but protocol, the history has had it where we have 30 minutes on the agenda for an item, staff gets 15 and we get 15. And sometimes that's not adhered to. And so if we could just be aware of that, because if staff takes 25, then we're automatically 20 minutes behind. And because we all want at least 3 minutes, whatever it is. So if you do the math, if we could just be a little bit more conscious about that, that would help us be a little bit more efficient with our time.
That put us after 7 o'clock, so thank you very much. All right, with that, we're adjourned.